All right. Starting a little bit early here tonight. First half, couple seconds away from ending here. Vikings down 23-3. Obviously not a very good game for our Minnesota Vikings here tonight. And if they do go on and lose this one, their playoff hopes are probably about done. Um, yeah, tough first half here for our Viking squad. Jaron Hall got to start this weekend after Nick Mullins threw 4 interceptions last week. And I mean, if I'm being completely honest, it hasn't been a great first half for Hall by any means. He's definitely missed he's definitely missed a few balls. Um, that interception, I don't think was on him by any means. I think Johnny Munt needed to catch that pass. Don't understand why Josh Oliver hasn't really gotten much playing time tonight, rather than Johnny Munt. I feel like Oliver's at least a better blocker, and he's also definitely a better pass catcher. We've seen that throughout this season with him. Not quite sure why Munt's getting all the reps here as the pass catching tight end, but yeah, 23-3 officially at the halftime. And it kind of just feels like we're watching the Vikings season come to an end here tonight. Even with the door opening again, with Seattle losing this afternoon, could jump back into that number 7 seed with a win, but doesn't look like that's going to happen. Kevin, that's the optimist side. That's a great game moving up the draft board, boys. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it for sure. If the season does inevitably come to an end tonight, I mean, that is the one thing. That is the one good thing. The Vikings are going to move up that draft board, and they are going to be in position to find a quarterback of the future potentially. Andrew over here, top 10 draft pick. Yeah, if they lose, I'm fairly sure that they move at least close to the top 10. They were sitting at number 14, I think, coming into the night. They'd be pretty close to that top 10 if they lose tonight. I haven't looked at the tankathon list here in a couple hours. I don't know exactly how things shaked out after the afternoon slate, but yeah, I mean, that is the one good thing. At least we've seen Jaron Hall now. He's played a full half. And it seems pretty clear at this point that he's at least going into 2024, he's not that guy that you can count on to be a starting quarterback. Green Bay's gotten a ton of pressure on him in this first half, and credit to Joe Barry and that Green Bay defense. I mean, the way to rattle a young quarterback is really to just put a lot of pressure on him and make him make really great throws. And the Packers have done a great job of doing that tonight, and Hall hasn't really delivered outside of a couple throws to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison on that second drive, but then a sack ultimately derailed that one as well. Andre, we're at the point where instead of getting beat by Hall of Fame QBs in Green Bay, now we're getting beat by average ones. Yeah, I do think that Jordan Love is a little bit better than average. But yeah, I think a lot of this loss is ultimately going to go on the defense as well. Caleb Evans has had an absolutely horrendous game in the secondary. They're desperately missing Byron Murphy out there right now. Just with his savvy veteran presence. I mean, Caleb Evans has just been torched all afternoon or all night. And then Cam Bynum's starting to play cornerback. Like the Vikings, they were coming into this game rail thin at that position already. Like Jalen Williams was getting snaps on the defense last week. And he's a guy that undrafted free agent's basically just been a practice squad guy all season long. And he's out there trying to make an impact on this defense. And yeah, it was always going to be a tough task to come in and beat this Packers team. Ryan, as fans, we're all disappointed. Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, like Kevin said earlier, though, at least we're moving up the draft board at this point, because that's really all we have to look forward to at this point is going into the offseason with a good chunk of cap space. Vikings are in the top half of the league in cap space still. They can go get a couple of free agents, and that's even with $28.5 million going to Kirk Cousins, regardless of if he's with the team or not. Our buddies over at Purple PTSD, a question from Twitter: how come they can crush our line and QB and we can't do it to them? Someone tell me what's the difference. I really think at this point the difference just is the Vikings. Obviously, Brian O'Neill is back in the lineup, but I think the Packers just realize that Jaron Hall is a rookie quarterback who is going to be just frazzled at the presence of a lot of guys coming at him all at once. And I think the Packers have done a great job of that. And I think on the Packers side, I mean, even without David Bakhtiari, that is still a really good offensive line, and the Vikings are missing DJ Wanham out there. Andre Carter's getting a ton of snaps, another guy that's been on the bottom of the depth chart all season. So the Vikings, like I said, they're rail thin on that side of the ball right now. Brian Flores is trying his best right now to field a unit. Let's see. We got a couple questions here now. Avon, what do we do in the second with the QB situation in the second half? It's really tough because I mean, Kevin O'Connell, I mean, I think Collinsworth mentioned it on the broadcast. How long can you keep Jaren Hall in there without causing damage to him, doing more bad than good, essentially? Because it's not been a very good half. It has not been a very good half for Jaren Hall. But I also think that some of that is to be a little bit expected. I mean, he's a rookie quarterback. He's a 5th-round QB. Nobody expected him to be in a starting situation this year by any means. And the fact that he's in there is just not it's not ideal. I mean, obviously, the only winner here is Kirk Cousins. Yeah, Andre, I do agree with you there. I mean, that y'all horn at the beginning of the game was electric. That was probably the highlight of the game, if we're being completely honest. And that's going to be the highlight of the game unless something crazy happens in the second half. But yeah, I mean, you got to bring Kirk back next year at this point. I mean, we've seen 3 different quarterbacks try to lead this offense. And I mean, Josh Dobbs did a decent job of it for a couple weeks, but none of that football was ever going to be sustainable. He was running all over the pocket, and he was really just doing a lot of things with his legs that made it work. And the throwing the ball wasn't even like the best part of his game by any means. So yeah, I think you bring Kirk Cousins back into this offense, and this is a team that can make the playoffs next season. Like if they stay healthy, which is obviously a very, very big asterisk considering what we've seen from this team all season long. They've got 11 players on IR right now after Troy Dye went there yesterday. But yeah, I think you bring Kirk Cousins back, and this is a fine roster. I don't know if there's a Super Bowl contending roster, but at least it's a squad that could probably get into the playoffs and make some noise, you know? So that is the bright side. And like I said earlier, the other bright side is we know with Jaren Hall now, at least, he's not the guy next year. Maybe give him a couple years and he can turn into something. But right now, he's just not a starting quarterback in this league. And that's really what I think the Vikings were trying to figure out going into this game is how much can they actually trust Jaren Hall to lead an offense. And right now, they just can't really do that. Like I said, maybe in a couple years he can do that. But right now, he's not the guy. And they need to go get somebody in this draft who can do that or potentially can do that. Like he doesn't even have to be a draft pick that they nail. You know, because quarterback prospects, whatever you say before the draft, you have to see it out on the field. And even if they don't hit next year or this spring, there's going to be guys in the 2025 draft that are really good. And maybe you go get one there. I like it when teams just take shots at guys. And this is a draft class with guys like Caleb Williams and Drake May, who the Vikings probably aren't going to end up landing, but Jaden Daniels out of LSU. He looks like a really good prospect. I would bet money that he goes top 5 and does pretty well at the NFL level. We'll see if the Vikings get him, but even guys like Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy, there are guys up and down this draft class that can make an impact at the NFL level, at least in my opinion. Take that as you will. But I think that the Vikings do need to go take a shot on a QB this spring and hopefully land a guy. But what we're seeing from Jaren Hall just isn't it, and it's not going to be the future. Carl saying Cousins is what we need. Yes, I 100% agree. If Kirk Cousins was healthy and in this offense, I don't think we'd be seeing the struggles that we're seeing this year. Gary says sign Cousins and spend the money to keep Jefferson. So the thing is with Cousins, the Vikings are already spending money on him next year, right? Because of what happened with his contract restructure last spring. They've got $28.5 million on the books for him next year already. That's whether he's on the team or even if he's not on the team. No matter what happens, they are paying essentially $28.5 million against the cap next year for Kirk Cousins. So if you can get him on a deal somewhere around that area, I mean, that feels like a no-brainer to me. Like bring him back on a 1-year, $30 million, $35 million deal. I would do that 10 times out of 10. You plug in Cousins to this offense. And like we saw, even without Jefferson, from weeks 5 through week 8, when Cousins eventually went down, that offense was absolutely rolling. They steamrolled the 49ers defense, which has been one of the best units in the entire league all season. So I think you plug Kirk Cousins into this offense, and we aren't having any of these questions about this team right now. So next year they're fine, but again, it goes into the question of what happens after Kirk Cousins. That's the question everybody's been asking for years and years, basically ever since Cousins got here, you know? So that's why I think they ultimately do. I would do both. I would sign Kirk Cousins and go get a quarterback in the draft, whether it's first round, second round, fourth round. I don't care. Just take a stab at a guy. I think there are guys up and down the class that can make an impact at the NFL level. In one of my recent mock drafts, I sent Michael Pratt out of Tulane to the Vikings. I think he's a guy that'll probably be available third round, fourth round, somewhere around there. But again, it's kind of a situation where he has to sit behind a starter for a year or two before he actually gets into the starting lineup. But he's a guy that I feel like he has the pocket presence. He's huge. He has mobility, and ultimately, I'm rambling right now, but like it all comes down to this. There are a lot of guys in this draft class that can lead his offense at the NFL level, and the Vikings need to go take a stab at a guy. Pretty sad when the halftime show turns into an off-season show. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're at this point. I don't really have much to say about this game other than the defense has been horrible. Jaren Hall has basically been what you expect out of a fifth-round rookie. Like, there's not really much to talk about this game. And if we're going to talk about something with the Vikings, it's probably got to be the offseason because their playoff hopes are pretty much dead after tonight. That's just the bitter reality of everything. Unless absolutely everything works out in week 18, the Vikings aren't making the playoffs. Maybe we look back on this in 2 hours and I'm completely wrong, but that's kind of where things are trending right now. Thoughts on Russell Wilson potentially coming to Minnesota? I don't really like that idea. One, like I said, because you're already paying Kirk Cousins money. So if you want a veteran QB, just bring back Kirk Cousins. And Russell Wilson, like, I think he's a fine QB, but at this point of his career, I just don't think that he's that much better than Kirk. You know, like the mobility is great, but he's also 35 years old. There's just as much of a chance of Russell Wilson, if not more, of Russell Wilson getting hurt as there is with Kirk Cousins getting another injury. So I don't really see the Vikings taking a stab at Russ this offseason. I think if they bring back a veteran QB, it would be Kirk Cousins again. Not even taking advantage of their DBs being out. Hall can't do it. Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, the Packers are in this game without Jair Alexander, without Eric Stokes. Like, this defense is almost as banged up as the Vikings defense at this point, other than the defensive front, which has just been absolutely fantastic. But yeah, if Hall isn't taking advantage of these backups on the Packers defense, he's sure as heck not going to be doing it against the starting defense. So that, like I started off with the show, I think that is the one positive takeaway that we can have from what's happened tonight is we've gotten to see Jaren Hall put in a pretty extensive amount of work in this game. And it's pretty clear that he's just not quite the guy, at least not yet. Maybe that changes in a couple years, but 2024, you can't trust that guy to be your starting quarterback at the NFL level. I don't care who the offensive coordinator is. I don't care who the head coach is. He's just not a guy that's capable of dealing with that NFL type pressure. And that's something that he did struggle a bit with in college as well at BYU. When he did get under pressure, he would make some erratic throws now and again. His internal clock wasn't exactly the fastest. And we're seeing that come into fruition again tonight. And yeah, Packers defense is doing a great job of taking advantage and exploiting the fact that he's a fifth-round rookie. So that's the one positive. Jaren Hall is probably not the guy moving forward. Maybe he's a solid backup next year. I do think he still has a path to be productive at the NFL level, but it's not going to happen this year. It's not going to happen next year. Hopefully, I'm completely wrong, and the Vikings just turn things around in the second half. Looks like the second half's about to get started here. I'll hang out with you guys a little bit longer if you have some questions. Mullins is in the second half now. Yep, looks to be the case. I've got my TV muted right now, so I didn't hear that. But if Mullins is playing, I think that gives the Vikings just as good a shot as Jaren Hall at this point because Hall has not dealt with the pressure well. Maybe we see Nick Mullins throw a couple of those gunslinger passes. That's the one good thing about Nick Mullins. He is not afraid to throw the ball and just rip it downfield. Like, regardless if it's a pick, regardless of if it's a touchdown, that guy is going to keep on throwing the ball downfield. And that's really the only shot that the Vikings have at coming back and winning this game. So I do like that decision. And again, just preventing any mental breakdown from Jaron Hall at this point, because that guy is he's gone through the ringer in that first half. So yeah, I'm gonna let you guys get back to the game, unless there are any few more questions coming in here. And yeah, happy New Year to everybody. Hope it's a great weekend for everyone, other than this painful Vikings game. And who knows, maybe the Vikings pull off an absolute miracle here. If they do, maybe I'll come back and do a post game show as well, because that would be absolutely electric if they come back and win this game somehow. But anyways, this has been the Purple Huddle. I am Josh Fry, managing editor over at purpleptsd.com. Be sure to go check out the website tonight. We'll have post game stuff tonight, tomorrow morning, all throughout the week. Vikings news never stops, so we'll be here 365 days a year, even into the off season. So be sure to keep on tuning into the website, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good evening.